Welcome back everybody to Tony's Top Tips Workshop. This video is about the cutters that we use on the CNC machines, or in fact routers. Now I used to work a lot of years ago, I used to work in a tool room at a furniture factory where I served my apprenticeship as a wood machinist and cabinet maker, and we used to have to sharpen all the tungsten tip saws, all the blades, planer blades, all the router cutters, everything, profile cutters. We had to do the lot, and so I was apprentice trained in that. And it's like a lot of the cutters we use, I prefer to use the either solid carbide or the carbide tipped. I mean, that's a 90-degree V-bit of 30s and 60s. Now those, they're not particularly the cheap ones and they're not the expensive ones. I think that one cost me around about £11, so I can get them half that price, but you get what you pay for with the tungsten carbide, the quality of the actual how it's made up. Now I prefer sharpening my own. Now I know a lot of you won't have the equipment that I have. I have a metalwork lathe over in the corner, so I do sharpen my own lathe cutters and that. And I'll just get one out, and don't only just sharpen me cutters for the lathe. I sharpen a lot of those, and they fit in the mag drill bits, annular cutters. And this machine here that you can see on the left, tool and cutter grinder, sharpens those extremely well. You can do, that's got 4 spurs on, cutting spurs. I do them with 8 on, sometimes more than that depending the size, and you can get them all on there. Have different types of diamond wheels, and you know, I've sharpened quite over my time, and for friends and other people. I've probably done, within reason, excess of 500 of these, different sizes. So the machine is paid for itself. They're not cheap, these, and I don't expect any of you out there to purchase one of these or even have one of these. It's just a video to show you what you can do if you haven't got one of these to sharpen your cutters, and if you have one of these, that you can sharpen to some extent a lot of the cutters that you would use, down to there is a size limit. Too small, it's no good, but those it sharpens them extremely well. I also have a machine there that sharpens me tungsten carbide saw blades, and it's just a little bit of insight into when you sharpen anything that's tungsten carbide, like this 90-degree bit here. You would normally, all circular saw blades, and if I can get you one off. Right, tungsten, that's one sharpened by me, as you can see. Now you find out on tungsten carbide blades is, we used to do them in the tool room, we very rarely top them. You only face them, because when you face them, you only take the tooth thickness off. When you top them every time, what happens is that tooth will become shorter, so it doesn't give you the reach into the cut that it would do. So what we used to do was, every face sharpen, we did a light topping. Okay, now you can see on that, I hope you can see that with different angles on. Okay, well, when you top them, you have to change for those different angles. Okay, but predominantly, if you keep up to your blades, you only really need to face them. Okay, that's on tungsten blades. Same with the V-bit cutters. as you can see that there. Now this has been well used, and you can just see on the back there, you see it there, where its heels just cut with the grinder. Now this has been sharpened. I've sharpened this probably about 6 times, no 7 times I've sharpened this, and you can hone them on the face, which is where you would sharpen them, because you don't alter the diameter of the cutter very little. You only take away the tooth, okay, the thickness of the tooth. Can you see that? You take away, sharpen them on the face, you'll take away the actual thickness there, from there, okay. But what I do is, on the machine, is I keep up to them and I just lightly top them, keep the same angles. Now that's a 90-degree bit, so I call it, right angles. But of course, when you come to sharpen them on here, you've got your 90-degree angle, plus you've got the back cut on the tooth. Okay, can you see it? You've got an angle there on the face of the tooth, and you've got also that angle, the 90 degrees. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just show you. I've got one set up, and this is a 60-degree bit, but the same principle applies, and I'll show you how I set it up. Now what you would normally do is, as you can see here in this setup, you see that? That's all my diamond sharpening, honing tools that I have, fine plates, and I can normally sharpen the cutters that I can't do on this machine. And basically all I would do is that's a very fine diamond facing, okay. And what you would do is, normally I would put a bit of oil on there, and this is what most people would have to do. Put a bit of oil on, just tip it down a bit more, put a bit of oil on there, and actually run that on the face, okay. You wouldn't do the top because you wouldn't be accurate enough with it, so you would run it on the face, and keep, if you can see that, that's how you would do it on a flat surface. I always lay it on a flat surface and run it up and down, okay. And that sharpens the face, and you need to really be thinking about doing that after every use, because what it does do is it just keeps that edge on, because once it starts to round, or you lose that edge, it'll round even more, even though it's tungsten carbide. So it's imperative that after each use you just hone them up, okay. We know there are some very small cutters that you've a job on, you wouldn't get that in, but they're more or less, once you've used them, they're disposable, the right small ones, but that's not, okay. The same thing goes, that's a 2-flute straight cutting bit, okay. Now you can sharpen those the same way. You can put it on the plate, put it there, and I can hone that up, okay, on the face, and that's what I normally do. But the bottom spurs there, you can see that, the bottom spurs, I actually do that on this machine. Now the way that you would sharpen them if you don't have sort of this machine is, you'd get that cutter, okay, and I use for levelling off any timber before I actually do any engraving, so it's all even. You'll put that on a diamond face, put that face on, and that's what you do with a bit of lubricant. I use WD-40 or a bit of water, rub that up and down, after every use you need to be doing this. Okay, they're not expensive, are these? I think I got a pack for about £20 with 3 different ones. Okay, and you would do that, keep it flat on a flat surface. Okay, just keep running it up and down, and you can already see, it sharpening the face of that. You can just see the polished part, and if I use a bit of lubricant and a bit more time, that will go completely flat. Okay, but I can sharpen the top spurs on here, so it's not too bad for that. But all you need to do really is just keep working on the face after every use, on the face. Same with the 90-degree V-bit, is same principle on the face. Make sure that's flat on that diamond. There's various diamond plates you can buy, and just run that up and down. It doesn't come off quickly, but once you keep up to it after every time you've used it, then it'll put an edge back on. And if you look at that one there, you can just see that shininess, and that's just 7 or 8 times up that plate. You will put the edge back on, okay, and it just keeps it there, and you can feel it there now. And I can't obviously put the pressure on that I need to when it's in my fingers. This is just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so a set of diamond plates, or diamond lapping sort of sharpening. There's different ones. There's I'll show you another one. There's that type. Okay, see that does the same. Pop that on. So there's that type, and there's that type. They're slightly cheaper, okay, but they still do the same. But you must keep that surface flat on there, okay. That's for sharpening them and keeping up to them if you've no machine. Now what this machine does, you can set different angles on it. Now in here I have an indexer here, and your various stops on this here. 360 degrees it will go around to, and that's a locking pin. Okay, it's locked in at the moment at 180 degrees, because when you've got 2 faces on like this, I'll hone that with the diamond, because you can't get in there with that. You just won't function. You can't get onto the diamond wheel in the correct alignment. But I can just gently top the top face. In fact, I'll show you. Look, you can see that there, that face there, across there. I don't know if you can see better if I turn that light off. There's a face there, so I'm just gently honing the top of that edge. Okay, I've done the face and I've done that one. Okay, now what you would do is, when you initially set up, you would pull that back. This all is everything set at 0 degrees. Okay, now that is a 60 degree bit, so when you set it at 0 on this one here, okay, then what you would do is you would line that up at level, so that the cutter would be actually in that position 90 degrees or in line with the diamond wheel. Okay, and then your cutter will be set up horizontal. Okay, then that's an actual 60 degree, so you would set this gauge here to 30 degrees. Okay, that's half. That would give you then the angle at which that, as you can see, moves in onto the face of the diamond wheel. Okay, now what you'll find out is that when you do that, you've set it up for that, it's not at the right angle for the reduction of the, you couldn't have it at 90 degrees, it has to have a relief cut on top of the face on the angle here. Now I've checked all my cutters and they all vary between 22 degrees and 31 degrees, and in fact that cutter has one side that's set that relief angle at the back there so that the heel of the tungsten doesn't, when it's revolving, doesn't catch that relief angle. That one was 22, this one was 27, because it's a cheap cutter, well, relatively cheap. It'll work at what it is, what it does, but when you come to sharpen the different angles, doesn't matter when you sharpen it on the face and keep honing it up, because that'll keep your edge on. But these have been used extensively, so I needed to put that angle back on and just take it off. Eventually, sometime, just honing it up, your cutter, you won't get the edge back on, okay, in which case you would dispense with it. All right, so this one is actually set at 28 degrees, okay. That is on the bottom one. So once you've set the angle of infeed across the face, then what you would do is you unlock the next one down and you set the angle over, which tips it over for your relief grind, okay. It's not everybody's cup of tea, is this. It's a machine that takes a little bit of time getting used to, but for what I use it for, it's absolutely superb. As I say, these machines are about 800-900 pound, very, very heavy, but good at what it does, okay. So that's set now. So you've a locking nut at the bottom which you lock onto the bar here, and that is your adjustment. The more I unscrew that, the more it'll go into the cut, okay. The more I unscrew it, you can see it now coming out. All right, so you set that so that your cutter point doesn't hit the shaft in the center, but yet you're getting all the face of the cutter, okay. And then it's a simple case of, remember, you've two spurs, two cutting faces, so that would be from 0 degrees when you lock it off, you cut it in the position, you would unlock it, you would do one face, it will be 180 degrees turn to get to the other face, okay. Same if there's 3 cutters, you would change it so 3's into 360, and then you would set that at the appropriate degrees, okay. So I'll turn it on. Relatively quiet. You can just hear that gradually touching, okay. Spin it round to 180, it'll lock in place. Now that's the one I haven't done, okay. Done the first one and that's been done now, okay. Then on this lever here, you would take it, I normally, on this particular one, I would take it about 3 thou, okay, and that will actually, and I move it round, back on there, and then I would take it in again. This is a dry diamond wheel. That means it doesn't need lubricant. You could use lubricant on it if you wanted, but it will work dry, okay. They are wet ones, okay. Take it down to 180 again, lock it off, and then we know, well, you know now that because that's been run past, that cutting spur and that cutting spur all touch at the same time. I'll just switch this off now. I'll just explain that what happens is you find out that with a cutter, if that cutting edge is not exactly the same as that one, what you'll find out is that if one's further out, that one will take most of the actual cutting force, and you'll see, and if you look at ever see a cutting, you think, why is that a bit more resined up than the other face? And it's because that's probably out more than this. And on the cheaper cutters, you'll find out that they won't all be even, but they'll work. Okay, now that cutter has got a lovely edge on now. Done the face and I've just topped it, and all I've taken off those two top faces is 3 thou. That's it. So it still maintains. Now going back to this cutter here, you can see that shiny bit there. I'll just see if I put this light back on, see if you can see. I don't know whether you can see that. You see that shiny bit there, and there isn't one there. Okay, that's the unevenness of that cutter. Now I've topped these on the same one, so that proves that that base part, the metal, the metal holding part of the cutter that holds and these tungsten tips are brazed to this metal. Okay, that's different to that side. Okay, now the cutting faces will work, so I know that that cutter, those two cutting faces are exactly the same. However, I know that that's further out. That little bit of further out there, that's only about 2 thou off there. That would say that that cutter had some vibration, because it's not even. And that goes back to how much you pay for a cutter. These have been mass produced. I'm not saying the expensive ones aren't, but there'll be a bit better quality control. But yeah, and I've used that numerous times. Now I know, because that's off now, when I use that, and this was done last time, that cutter is pretty much balanced now. Okay, and it gives a lovely finish. Now I'll just take this one out. Okay, now you can see that now. It's a lovely finish on that cutter. Nice edge, and that'll give a pretty good finish on hardwoods and softwoods now. And what I do sometimes is I look at the edge of a quite strong magnifying glass, and when I get a new cutter I always look at the edge, because I've had a number of, and I get cutters in, like I buy 6 of one and maybe 2 or 3 selective ones, and when they come I always look at the face of them. And I've had a couple now in the last batch that I ordered, and they were actually, you could see that the edges weren't up to scratch. You wouldn't know, you just put it in the router or you put it in your CNC and you think, oh, what's up with that? And it's your cutter. Always check your cutters when you get them. Just look at them. If you've got a microscope, well, not a microscope, I have a digital one now, as I've done a video on, and I should be using that for the same job. But if you've got a handheld magnifying glass, just have a look and make sure that that edge is there, and you'll see it, because in anything that's sharp, you shine a light at it or put it into the correct light, and if it's sharp you don't get a reflection back from the edge because it's such a fine edge. And the same thing applies to tungsten carbide. If you see a reflection in any part of the point of the edge of the tungsten carbide, then it's dulled and it probably hasn't been sharpened correctly. Okay, but I know they are now. All right. It is a good machine, this, for doing what I want, but you don't have to have that. I'm just showing you the way I do it. I still use the face sharpen after every time. I don't use the machine every time, but every 6 face honing I'll put it on here and just take a little bit off the top edge. Okay, you could, if you're steady enough, do the edge on a diamond. All right, but predominantly stick to the face and lubricate. Get a good diamond lapping stone, and then and just keep to it. Keep it flat. Put it on a nice flat surface. Keep it in, and then just face it off. And do that every time you've used it. Do it before you put it back in the box. Don't go back and say, oh, I'll sharpen it later. It don't work, because you forget, and before you know it, you've put it back in the machine, and then it's got even more dull as the edge, so it takes even more time to keep that edge on. So it's just I mean, the video is just a little bit of advice that I'm passing on to the experienced CNC workers, or anybody that's working with routers. They'll know this, but for the, you know, the newbies, the people that haven't worked with tungsten carbide tip cutters or solid carbide tip cutters, it's just a little bit of knowledge for you, information that can save you some money, because a dull cutter can cause other problems. It can destroy your project that you're doing. It can destroy your timber. It can even shatter the teeth, because you're pushing it beyond its limits, because it's got a dull edge. Okay, and believe me, tungsten carbide tip cutters, I've had tips come off. Okay, I've bought some cutters that I thought were expensive ones, and yeah, I've made mistakes on purchasing stuff until you know where you get the gear from, and they've come from China. I didn't realise it come with an English name on the box, and I bought there wasn't that, they were actual router cutters for doing worktops. I were doing some worktops and button scribing them, and I bought some cutters. I thought they were good, and the second cutter I used, because I used to get 3 joints out of one cutter, and then I used to hone them up. I used a new one. I popped it in, and on the first pass I heard a funny noise, and then it started to vibrate, and I looked, and half the tungsten carbide had come off. It hadn't been brazed correctly, which is from the tip to the metal, there's brazing down there. Okay, and what it was on part of the point of it was, I'm just going to show you, that's a very, very smaller version of a cutter you'd use on a button scribe worktop. Okay, but they're a lot longer and a lot bigger. 1/2 inch router I use for them, and the bottom 1/4 of an inch come off, because the braze hadn't gone down there. It'd been sharpened and everything, and of course when they dipped him and painted, you don't see that there's a gap at the back of the tungsten carbide. And what tungsten carbide won't do is flex. If there's a gap at the back because the braze hasn't got down there, then what happens is, first time you hit that, then it'll flex it even the small amount, the gap that's there behind the back of the tip of the tooth, and it just did it 2 or 3 times and snapped it, off it come. I don't know where it went. But just a word of warning, always inspect your cutters when you buy them. Well, that's the quick video I wanted to. I wanted really to pass it on to all my subscribers and anybody that's out there, because I read all the forums. I'm a member of a lot of forums, should I say, and I read all the troubles that a lot of people are having, and you know what they tend to call themselves is newbies to CNC work and what have you, and what's the best way forward, and I'm having problems with this and the cut's rubbish and all this. It's all a question of take your time, read, understand your machine and how it works, understand your timber of what hardwood, what softwoods would do, what plywood would do, what's in plywood, how it's made up, resin that's in it, how it dulls your cutter when you're cutting plywood, chipboard if you're doing chipboard, MDF. Look at the makeup of your materials and then look at your cutters. Make sure it's the correct cutter, and don't be afraid to ask which is the best cutter. What do you think I should be running it at? Because RPM wise, because if I'm running that cutter in my CNC machine, big one, small one, CNC, it doesn't matter which. If I'm running that one, because it's small, it's running at a high RPM, okay? You put that in, you wouldn't run that at the same RPM, you know, 22,000 RPM, so that is far too fast, okay? I'm not saying it wouldn't do the job, but it wouldn't do it. But you're spinning something that's a bigger diameter, a lot more weight in the cutter than something like that. Okay, so it's a question of knowledge, and when you've actually found a cutter that works, the correct RPM, practice on a piece of timber, do different feed speeds, do different RPMs, try an up cut or a down cut or a plunge bit, see which is the best cutter. And then once you've found a good finish and the machine isn't labouring in trying to cut, because you notice you'll get used to the fact of the sound of the router or your motor. When it's labouring, something's not right. It's either too fast a feed speed or you're taking too much off each pass, okay? So and then once you've found that happy medium, write it down. I have a little book, and in it, because I can't remember everything all the time. Did I use that cutter last time? Oh, I can't remember. I go up, it's on the computer for me, and I log it down. I use that cutter, that RPM, whether it's big machine it'll be different to small machine, or 30 over there. Then you know, and you get, then you're working safely, because there's a lot of, I read a lot of info and feedback, and I get feedback as well from people that have they're cutting something and next thing the cutter's broke. I said, I don't know what I did wrong. I'm sorry, I'm new to it. Have I done something wrong? Is it my fault? Inevitably, 99.9% of the time it's the operator's fault, because you've either taken too much off on each pass, or you're running a too high feed speed for that cutter, or in actual fact it could be the wrong cutter. Okay, so it's just a question of knowledge, and take your time and one step at a time, as I always say. My dad used to a lot of years ago, he used to let me play around with his metal lathe in his workshop, and I used to say to him, oh, Dad, he said, it's time consuming, is this, on a metal lathe? He said, lad, he said, on your woodwork lathe you working taking millimetres off at a pass. He said, on that metalwork lathe I work in thous. He said there's a big difference, and I understood what he meant. Unfortunate for me, he isn't here now, and I just wish I'd have picked more of his knowledge up, as he were a good engineer, and I've acquired a lot of his equipment. And that's why I've got this, so that when I go on the metal lathe I can actually utilise this to sharpen the cutters. These are some of the actual lathe cutter inserts that I use, okay, and they're not cheap, but when you can sharpen them yourself, or the normal tungsten carbide cutters that I use for the lathe, I can sharpen them on here. Right, that's the conclusion to this video. I'm going to do a bit of a video on the machine that I use. It's a simple machine that I use to sharpen me tungsten carbide tip blades on. I'll do that in the future. This was just a video really that I briefly and haphazardly put together, really, because I was just not disappointed, but a lot of people out there on the forums were so frustrated and about things that were going wrong, and they've damaged the cutter, and the cutter's not working like it should. How many cuts do you get out of a cutter, and this and other, and it's just that, you know, I'll put a little bit back that the fact that you can keep your cutters with a reasonable edge on. It's just a bit of cutter maintenance and care, that's all it is. And the favourite thing, one of the most important items for cutters or saw blades, tungsten tipped, is keeping the resin build up on the cutter, okay? One of the best products to use for cleaning the resin off, believe it or not, is Mr. Muscle oven cleaner. I just have a plastic tray, I spray it on the cutter, leave it 5 minutes, brass wire brush, that's all that is, and then doesn't damage the edge of the cutter. Clean it, brush between it, rinse it off, dry it thoroughly, spray it with a bit of WD-40, hone it up. Oven cleaner. So that's the conclusion to this video now. So remember, thumbs up, like and subscribe, it helps me a lot. It helps me put more content out there, and all my videos are to help people. It's, you know, there's nothing that I've got here that I haven't purchased myself. You know, and I have a lot of equipment, so if I can pass something on and just help one person, it's been worthwhile. So, and as I always say at the end of my videos, you be careful and you be safe, and bye for now.